The Detroit Lions just went into Baltimore and they beat the Baltimore Ravens 38-30 in a very interesting game between two of the best teams in the NFL on paper and by performance over the last couple years. Both were in the conference championship games just 2 years ago. And this game started off hectic with just haymakers thrown by both quarterbacks and them throwing the ball all over the field. But eventually, the Lions were the team that settled into this game and really made it their game. Jared Goff played a very clean game, no turnovers, and he didn't put the ball in harm's way. He was finding his receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown had another great game. Sonic and Knuckles had 4 touchdowns in total. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, the best running back duo in the NFL, you would have to say. And yeah, the Lions just did what they did to so many teams for so many years. They were doing a very good job of protecting Jared Goff. No sacks allowed. Like I said, the receivers played incredibly well, but it was the defensive line. Aiden Hutchinson, it's so good that he's back and playing at full force. Anzalone and many others. 7 sacks against the Ravens offensive line. For you to sack a quarterback 7 times, it means that you were terrorizing that offensive line. But to do it with a quarterback with as much escape ability as Lamar Jackson is insane. Is insane. Now, one thing that a lot of fans don't really realize is that just because you have a mobile quarterback like Lamar doesn't mean that you don't don't have a bunch of sacks given up, because even though Lamar can escape a lot of sacks, maybe because of his rushing ability, he also runs into a lot of sacks as well. And a lot of fans don't realize that. Same thing with Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields. They may run into a lot of sacks that they don't fully realize because their legs are always a threat. But 7 sacks regardless means that they were having their way against the Ravens offensive line. And that's really where this game was won for me, in the trenches. And I thought that was the most consequential part. But another thing the Lions did very well, Derrick Henry. I saw a stat during this game. This is the first season of Derrick Henry's career in which he's had 2 fourth quarter fumbles in one season, and it only happened over the course of the first 3 weeks. During the first 3 weeks, he lost the ball in the first week against the Bills, and he lost the ball against the Lions in week 3. I mean, you just don't see that from Derrick Henry. With how big and strong and powerful he is, he doesn't just lose the ball like that. But a great punch out by Aiden Hutchinson. The Lions recovered the ball. They only got a field goal there, but most importantly, they stopped another Ravens drive opportunity. You know, the Ravens didn't end up scoring. They punted after that. The Lions get the ball back. They go all the way down the field. They run a great trick play. Amon-Ra St. Brown gets the handoff, and then he flips it off to Jahmyr Gibbs. And they don't just get the first down on a 4th and 1. They go in and they get the touchdown, and they basically iced the game, because at that point it was like a 2-score game with less than 5 minutes left. The Ravens did get another touchdown because of some penalty that shouldn't have happened and several other things, but they don't get a 2-point conversion. The Lions are able to ice the game on another very good Jared Goff pass as well. He doesn't get enough credit for as good of a passer that he is. He's a very good and talented and accurate passer who doesn't seem to put the ball in harm's way too often. Of course, it can happen. I believe it was last year's game against the Texans where Jared Goff threw 5 picks, so it's not impossible. But he is a really good passer of the ball. He's not as talented as someone like a Matthew Stafford, but he is able to get the ball into the right places. And when you have very dangerous threats like a Jahmyr Gibbs, a Montgomery, an Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jameson Williams, you know, danger may happen, and that's exactly what he's able to do. So major respects to the Detroit Lions. But the Ravens, I mean, this leaves huge question marks about them. It doesn't seem like this roster is complete enough. You know, they still have some guys, obviously Zay Flowers and Bateman, and of course DeAndre Hopkins, who looked a lot better already this year than he did last year. He made one sideline catch yesterday that looked great. You know, Lamar is still Lamar, you know, the most dynamic quarterback we've ever seen, the best dual threat quarterback we've ever seen. Derrick Henry is still a stud. I know he's had those 2 fumbles, but that guy's still a baller, and that guy can still, you know, run out the stadium at any moment. So I'm not too worried about him. He's just been unlucky with the fumbles. Mark Andrews looks great. Isaiah Likely is obviously still injured. They definitely miss him. But the main issue is just in the trenches, and games are won in the offensive and defensive line. It hurt that they didn't have Nnamdi Madubuike in this game to maybe terrorize that offensive line of Detroit and maybe hurt Jared Goff a little bit more, because Penei Sewell and others, they were just able to say they were able to do absolutely nothing with their offensive line, and Glasnow and several others, and they did a great job protecting him. So I think maybe they need some more beef on the defensive line. Hopefully getting Madubuike back will help. But it's mainly the offensive line where you say, this is a problem. This is trouble. This seems like it could very well affects the Ravens for a long period of time. You think a quarterback as good as Lamar Jackson, maybe his escapability is so good that he doesn't need a great offensive line. But every quarterback needs some form of an offensive line, some form of it. It doesn't need to be, Eagles level, but it needs to be somewhat decent, or else you get a situation like Mahomes rushing for his life in both of the Super Bowls that he's lost and been blown out in, because there was absolutely no one to protect him at all. So the Ravens have major question marks at the moment. It's crazy to think that they play the Chiefs next week, and either the Ravens or the Chiefs will start the season 1-3. I would have never guessed that going into the season. For the Ravens, maybe it makes a little bit of sense because they had to play the Bills and the Lions and then the Chiefs. So if they go 1-3 against those four teams, you'd be like, all right, that's not the craziest thing to expect given that their schedule, because we all knew they were going to be the Browns. But for the Chiefs, I guess it's understandable that they lost to the Eagles, and if they lose to the Ravens, for instance, I guess I get it. But maybe they shouldn't have lost to the Chargers in week 1, but the Chargers obviously are much better than we thought that they were. But yeah, the Ravens, just major question marks. The Lions look like they're back to their brilliant best, and it didn't seem that way after the playoff debacle that they had against the Commanders last year and the way that the Packers practically shut them out in week 1. But Lions are 2-1. The Packers also 2-1. They're tied for first in their division. Also with the Vikings, so I forgot to mention, are also 2-1. They blew out the Bengals, even with JJ McCarthy not playing. The Bears even won their game, even though they're 1-2 last in the division. The Bears beat the Cowboys pretty well, so that's going to be a very competitive division that the Lions are in. And the Ravens still are clear-cut winners to win the AFC North, especially with Joe Burrow being hurt. The Steelers don't really impose that much of a threat, I don't feel like, because they barely beat the Patriots, and it results in the Patriots fumbling like 4 times for them to win that game. The Browns can get lucky every now and then, like a game against the Packers, but you don't fear them really beating the Ravens or any of those other teams in the AFC North really for long stretches of time. But regardless, Lions win. Ravens have many question marks. And it'll be interesting how the Ravens are able to bounce back from this, because let's not forget they started last season 0-2 as well. And it was Lamar Jackson who just showed his excellence and was able to basically win MVP. I know he didn't technically win MVP, but we all felt like he was by far the best quarterback last year and had one of the greatest quarterback seasons ever. So I think they'll bounce back from that just because they have that guy first and foremost. And the Lions look like they're on a roll, and they are headed for another season where they just dominate maybe their division, maybe the entire NFC, and they could be Super Bowl contenders again because they just have that much of a talented roster. We'll see what happens, but things are looking good for the Lions, not so good for the Ravens so far.